Just while we're waiting here, Jim, do you mind? I got actually got a personal question. What are your hobbies, and what do you do outside of your important work that you're doing?
Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I ride Harley Davidsons. I like motorbikes. I've been riding motorbikes for, 20 odd years. And I like all bikes, to be honest, where it's trial bikes, road bikes, whatever. But yeah, I've got a really nice Harley Davidson that I love and love to ride it. Tend to be what they call a fair weather biker, in that I don't like going out in the cold weather if it's raining too much. But because I wear the standard black leathers, I'm a member of the West Coast Harley chapter in Glasgow, and that's one of the things I like to do. I also like fishing, and I like target practice, shooting targets and things. And I suppose just walking about in the countryside. I mean, I love the beaches. Um, if I can hang out near the seaside, if I could go out in boats, I'm happy. I think I must have been a pirate in my last life. I'm sure of it. But that salty sea air. When I was in Australia, that was one of the things I loved about the beaches down at the Gold Coast because I'd go swimming out there, and people say, "Yeah, you're mad. There's sharks out there, and there's all sorts of jellyfish and stuff." But I kind of loved that freedom, loving that spirit of freedom there. My hair was long; it was way down my back. I was a real beach guy, and I liked surfing. So haven't done that for a while, but I certainly did do a lot of that when I was out there, and did it for a while after that as well. But so that's kind of sort of gives you a bit of an idea about what I kind of like to do and pass the time doing. But nowadays, I'm kind of more into the research, the political things. I've kind of been consumed by a lot of that. But yeah, I still have passion for the countryside. Love it.
Interesting. And I'll ask one more personal question before we kick back into the conversation. What is one item that you have on your bucket list that you want to do?
You know, I guess there's a lot of things I want to do, but right now, I think probably uniting people around the world and reassuring people that there is hope for the future, that there isn't that we mustn't lose hope. I think probably getting everybody that loves their freedom, that loves their countries, to unite together to understand that it's not lost. These rotten, horrible, globalist, evil people, they're not going to win. I don't believe they're going to win. In fact, I believe they're going to lose everything in the end game. But I do like traveling. I spent some wonderful times in Australia, and I would love to get back there. Love to get back down to see you guys there. And I never quite made it across to New Zealand. And that was one big regret that I had. The other thing that I would love to have done was go to Western Australia because it's a wilderness. I love the whole concept, the whole idea about Western Australia. It's like a separate country, a separate state in its own right. They're almost quite independent, really, in terms of the mining and the things that they do. And as I was speaking to somebody earlier on today, in Perth is probably one of the most isolated cities on the planet, and I would love to have visited Perth. So there's loads of things that I want to do, um, but maybe that's giving you a bit of an insight into it. But right now, I think my primary focus is on pushing back against the bad guys and helping the people of the world to sort of understand that all is not lost. There is hope out there. There is a lot of things that we can do, and there's a lot of things that are about to be revealed over the course of the next few weeks and months that I think are going to give a lot of encouragement to people right around the world.
Well, Jim, I can tell you from my perspective and just the important work you're doing to raise the awareness of what happened to New Zealand Australian citizens. Yeah, you've certainly got we got a spare room at the house, mate. You're welcome. We got a barbecue here, and we got some cold beers in the fridge. So yeah, I'd love to have you over in New Zealand and host you, show you around the country, and I would also love to visit your part of the world. Those you can see, my last name's Tulloch, so I have Scottish heritage, Scottish Māori. So yeah, it's amazing that we could come together in this space. But I'd just like to throw a shout out again to our show sponsors, Zeno Mining, who are down below there, democratized wholesale crypto mining for people. It's all part of this journey we're on for freedom. But I'd just like to throw it back to Vince, who's been hosting, and my voice is absolutely dead. I think it's probably a good idea if I just keep this connection stable so that we can keep the space going. So throwing it back to you, Vince.
Yeah, no worries, Mark. Thank you so much. And Jim, apologies for that. But we did have a couple people that are back up on the speaker panel that did have some questions for you. And I wanted to give 45 Perk an opportunity because he did have some an interesting question for you relative to resources. So I want to pass the mic over to him to ask his question of you.
Hi Jim and hi panel, thank you very much for having me. And uh, what I'd like to ask you, Jim, is when it comes to Scotland's resources, do you think that Nicola Sturgeon was pushed out to embed Hunter Youssef as the Scottish minister because he'd been sold out to the elitist, and because we create so much resources through electricity, through wind farms, through turbines, etc., that we should be independently energy free? And also, what else was I going to say? Is about IndyRef. You mentioned about country sovereignty. What do you think about IndyRef? Thank you.
Well, it's always great to see a fellow Scot in the chat, mate. Great to see you. I can tell by your accent you're down in the southern part of Scotland. I'm a Scottish Highlander, but
Yeah, central.
nevertheless, we're a central belt. Yeah. Nevertheless, great to see you, mate. Well, when all is said and done, I believe in autonomy, and I'm not actually against Scottish independence at all. But I don't want to be governed by people. I mean, my biggest problem with it's like Nicola Sturgeon is that she has said that she doesn't really want to be independent. She wants to be part of the European Union. Now, I've got a good friend in Herman Kelly, who is the leader of the Irish Freedom Party, for example, and him and I have become good friends. I've had him on my channel a few times, and I've got a great side to the Irish people. I've never met anybody from Ireland that I didn't get on with really well. And he's an Irish nationalist. He wants a unified Ireland. I understand exactly where he's coming from, and of course, that's a contentious issue in regards to Northern Ireland. I totally get the guys in Northern Ireland, and I support them. But when all is said and done, I don't mind countries wanting to get autonomy and independence. But if it's true independence you want, that's fine. True independence that it will be then, but don't ever try to pretend that being subservient and being controlled by the European Union is independence, because it's not. It's nothing like independence. You want to be an independent Scotland. We want to be an independent Scotland. That's fine. We stand on our own 2 feet. We have separate trade agreements with England, Wales, Ireland, whoever else in the world. We go it alone. But if the SNP's version of independence has been subservient to the EU, no thanks. Not interested, mate. So hopefully that will give you a bit of an indication as to where I stand on that. I fought for British independence to be completely separate from the EU, and I would fight for Scottish independence on that basis, provided Scotland was truly independent. But I've got nothing against anybody from England or Wales or Northern Ireland or Ireland. I believe that there's a lot of positivity in all of that. But when you see the likes of Richie Sunak and what he's doing, he's a globalist. He's got no interest in the people of Scotland. He's supposed to be serving the people of Britain, the United Kingdom, and he's not. But if you want independence, that's fine. Fight for independence. Go for independence. But independence doesn't come when you're part or a slave to the European Union.
But kind of brings me back to the question about our resources, Jim. We all know that Scotland is one of the richest countries in the world, in the top 10 with resources. where it comes from, electricity, oil, gas. We basically have all, even our water, down to our water. So we could actually be independently. The only reason I kind of supported the SNP was because they were for independence, and as soon as we got them in, we could have kicked them out and made up another party, or yourself could have made up a party, and I'd have happily joined that. But apologies to everyone else, my broad Scottish accent, they might not understand a word I'm saying, but I think Jim does.
Yeah, mate,
Thank you.
I totally get it, and I do understand everything you're saying, mate. And I have to say, it's great to see another fellow Scot in the chat. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. Scotland's got a lot of resources. We there's a lot of oil in the North Sea. There's oil all over the place, and you know, when all is said and done, Scotland's a fantastic country. I'm proud and so proud to be a Scottish Highlander. But you know, it saddens me when I see people that think they're going to get independence from the SNP. The Scottish National Party is not what it portrays itself to be. For those of you who may not be aware of it, Nicola Sturgeon, the former First Minister of Scotland, is under investigation for fraud and very serious wrongdoing. She is a Europhile. And she believes in being subservient to the European Union, and I do not. And anybody that wants Scottish independence cannot possibly have Scottish independence whilst being subservient to the European Union. So, you know, Scotland wants to be independent. That's great. I appreciate your vote of confidence. It's not the first time somebody has said, "Hey, Jim, you should form a completely separate Scottish independence party." We would vote for you. I would never rule that out. But if it is Scottish independence, then it's proper Scottish independence. Hopefully, that's given you a bit of an insight into it. I'm not against it, but what I am against is any kind of pretense that you can be independent whilst being told and dictated to by the European Union, which is probably one of the most undemocratic institutions in the world. And I want no part of them. So hopefully that gives you my view on it.
100%, Jim. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I do agree with that. Thank you very much. I'll yield the mic.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. I do want to give Paul a chance. I know he was in our other space before we lost that. And Paul, I want to pass the mic over to you for either making a statement or asking a question to Jim. So there you go.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys, and thanks for putting on this space. I was put onto your spaces by Moneypenny, who's on this space again, so appreciate that. And I think one of the key things is that crypto is providing people with the opportunity to disconnect from the kind of standard financial system. So more power to everyone, but obviously do your own research. Jim, really interesting to hear your opinion on things, and just kind of looking at the way that the steady state, rather than the deep state, the way the steady state operates. How do you feel that we are going to be able to, as individuals, unhook our politicians from the teats of the World Economic Forum? Because politicians are inherently vain people. They're narcissistic. They're pretty lazy, and they love being given their talking points rather than actually having any principles of their own. And obviously, for me, if I'm going to vote for someone, one of my first qualifiers is going to be, if you're a member of the World Economic Forum, I'm just never going to vote for you. But how do you think we can get people to unhook from it and not fall for the old lies where they say, well, the Conservatives say, well, in the UK, well, if you don't vote for us, you're going to get Labour. The answer is people shouldn't be voting for either of these parties because they're basically the uni party. But yeah, just interested on how you think we can begin to sort of reposition public sentiment.
Well, thanks, Paul. Delighted to hear from you. And you referenced Moneypenny. Moneypenny's an interesting lady, and I'm sure we're going to hear from her shortly. But when all is said and done, Paul, I believe that people are indeed waking up, and I think people are starting to understand that politicians. And by the way, it was pointed out to me when I was running with the Conservative Party. in 2010 at the general election, and then again in 2019 with the Brexit Party, that I was in fact a politician. I had arguments with people. I said, "Don't call me a politician. I hate politicians." But they said, "Well, but you're in politics. You know, you're standing for Parliament. That makes you a politician." I guess I suppose it does. But I have a very dim view of, in particular, career politicians. I believe that anybody that hasn't lived in the real world should never, ever be allowed near the political arena, because how can you possibly know what real people want, or what they need? People that have been council workers, teachers, police officers, soldiers, whatever, nurses, yeah, sure, yeah, okay, they've seen the real world. But career politicians that get a degree in politics that decide they're going to go in and tell everybody what to do, no, I don't agree with that. I think there should be a change in the whole dynamic as to who qualifies to be a politician. And unless you've seen a little bit of the real world and you've lived the real life and you know what ordinary people go through, you should never be allowed near what we call the green benches in the UK. Paul, it's an interesting comment that you've made there. You've raised some really good points. And I mean, my grandmother was born within the sound of the Bow Bells, so I'm connected to London. I'm a Scottish Highlander. I've got some strange family connections in that, I've got Viking blood in me from Norway. I've got Scottish Highlander blood in me, and I'm also connected through family to England as well. So I'm a true Brit, you know. I'm very proud of my Scottish heritage. The previous speaker was talking about Scottish independence. I'm not against that at all. But if it's going to be independence, it's got to be proper independence. And I don't really see the need for it. Although, having said that, with the way that Richie Sunak, and as you quite correctly pointed out, the uniparty system, is deeply concerning, because we've got globalists in the Conservative Party, we've got globalists in the Labour Party. And for those people that are not Brits that might wonder, well, what is the Labour Party? Well, the Labour Party was formed by my fellow countryman, Sir Keir Hardie, from Glasgow many, many years ago. And it became a movement. It was about, autonomy. It was about workers' rights. It was about protecting people in their employment, not putting them into dangerous circumstances because of unscrupulous employers. And in actual fact, I can totally identify with the true labour movement, and I do understand why it was important for the unions to form to protect the ordinary people, the ordinary workers. I get that. I'm not against it at all. But the Labour Party is nothing like what it used to be. They are run now by a guy called Keir Starmer, who is just another globalist. He's no different to Richie Sunak. And if you vote for either Conservative or Labour Party in the UK, you're voting for Klaus Schwab. Let's be quite honest about it. It's the same in Canada. You vote for the Liberal Party, and it's argued, Pierre Poilievre in Canada, he heads up the Conservative Party. I'm a Brit. Some people might say, well, Jim, mind your own business. You're not a Canadian. Well, okay, fair enough. But you know what? If he's a globalist, then I have an opinion on that. And I think a lot of people in Canada are a little bit concerned that he may well be leaning towards the World Economic Forum. Same in France. Emmanuel Macron, he's a globalist. He's part of the World Economic Forum. The same in Australia. You've got these people that are signed up to it. They spend more time at Davos than they do in their own country. And although we've got a new government in New Zealand, well, once again, I think the proof of the pudding there is, what do they do with this guy Barry Young? Do they give him whistleblower rights? Do they honour his coming out and basically trying to warn people, or do they hit him with a sledgehammer? That's going to be an interesting one for the people in New Zealand. But the uni parties are right. You're right, Paul. They are there. Who do you vote for? Well, who can you vote for? If you're basically voting for one or the other, and you're going to end up with Klaus Schwab making the policies for your country, then you're not in a free and true democracy, are we? And I think at the end of the day, that's where people are. That's where they're having to contend with that. And the other thing, of course, is that people are saying, well, who's the least worst? I mean, we've been in the United Kingdom, and I know this is the same in other countries. We're saying, right, who do we vote for? Well, who's the least worst? That's not the way we should be doing things. We should be voting for people that we actually like, parties that we agree with, not the least worst. I mean, good grief, how bad have things got in political circles around the world when we're voting for the least worst party. So, Paul, I hope that's given you a bit of an insight into my thinking on it. Happy to take questions on that, though.
Yeah, no, it's really interesting, and I'm always happy to hear British regional accents on spaces, so that's awesome. And but you raise a really interesting point in New Zealand, because obviously the whistleblower who's come out, because they've made such a fuss and they dealt with him so horrendously, they've actually ended up promoting the fact that he was calling into question the stats, and being that the kind of one guy who had a sight of everything, so almost in a unique position. But also, I think there was a FOIA request, I think, that came out today or the last couple of days, saying the 11,000 exempt people in the government in New Zealand and other people who didn't have to have the jab, and all of these things are good news, that it's actually coming out and there's visibility, and I think that's really important. And when you were talking earlier about what do we do, the answer is no one's coming to save us. There's no one coming over the hill. We need to do all of this work ourselves, and we need to share information, and we need to talk, because humanity will ultimately win. And I do think that we're in the kind of dying throes of an expiring regime. But they are good, and they've been doing it for a long time, and we need to continue to push back. And especially, and I will say this, I was told by someone very senior in the UK government during COVID, they had a nudge unit, the behavioural science team, and they said that they were surprised at just how compliant the British public were during lockdowns. Like, it went over and above what their expectations were. And the good thing that we've seen now is the amount of pushback is that that's probably never going to be possible again, and that's only down to human action and human agency, and things like these spaces that probably wouldn't have happened under the old Twitter. People have questions about where Musk sits on the scale, but these sorts of spaces and conversations and connections are just going to be so incredibly critical for success over the next couple of years. So just more power to your elbow, Jim, and everyone who's going to be playing their part. And I really appreciate you taking the time to answer my questions.
Thanks, Paul. I absolutely agree. The solutions are going to come from us, the British people, the Canadian people, the American people, the Aussies and the Kiwis. We are the ones that are going to find the solutions. And as you continue to watch things develop with me in terms of what I'm communicating to people, you're going to find out that there are people like me, like you, and many others who are formulating plans. We're not just talking about things, we're actually doing things. We may not have come out completely and said what we're going to do. We're wanting to make sure that we are right and we are working together. But for the last 7, 8, 9, 10 months, I've been speaking to a lot of people internationally, and of course in the UK as well. And there's a lot of things happening. There's a lot of pushback going to come. And what we want to do is we want to unify people all around the world, because what we're facing are global problems. And I personally believe, and many people agree with me, that we need a global solution. And the only way we're going to do that is to unite around the world, regardless of what accents we speak with, regardless of what countries we come from, because the problems that we're facing are the same. Whether you're in New Zealand, Australia, whether you're in America or Great Britain or France or Holland or wherever you are, we are facing exactly the same challenges. Rising inflation, food costs, prices, fuel costs, we're all in this together. And I think once we come together in a unified way, that pushback will happen. It's inevitable. And I think you're going to find that these evil people that think they've got it all their own way with their millions or their billions and their networks within the World Economic Forum and the United Nations and the World Health Organization, when that pushback comes, it's going to be massive. It's going to be big. And it doesn't have to be violent. It can simply be where we say, we do not comply. We do not accept your rule over us. We are a free and independent and sovereign people, and we're going to do things the way we want to do them, not the way you're going to tell us. So, Paul, I very much agree with you, and it's always nice to touch base with a fellow Brit. And although you're English and I'm Scottish, nevertheless, I've spent some great times with you guys down in England, and very, very, very grateful for the English people that supported me in Barnsley when I was standing with Nigel Farage fighting for British independence. I'll never forget that. Thank you.
Awesome, Jim. Do you think that, like, for us, I think here, even in the US, we've seen this career politician aspect of it where, we know that they make a government salary, but how do they end up with millions? And you don't really have to be a rocket scientist to figure out that that money's got to be coming from somewhere, that they just don't end up by a millionaire by accident. Especially when they have, like what you're saying, they haven't lived in the real world. They haven't built a business from scratch. They haven't learned, how we do things. And even for myself, I look at, you know, having to work for a big corporation and looking at how they prioritize things is, when we look at how we spend money in our own homes, they'll spend money on things. It's left scratching our head going, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, where's the logic in this? But yet they still do these things. But, that's another tangent I can go off on, but I do want to go ahead and I know GovT, I think it's Kevin over there has had his hands up for a little while. I'll pass the mic back over to him.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me speak again. I guess I'll keep it quick. And so Jim, I just want to throw this question out to you. Over the COVID lockdowns and the COVID restrictions, we can point to the governments, the Justin Trudeau's who said that, as a Canadian, I wasn't allowed to, leave the country. I wasn't allowed to get on a plane, or even down to the provincial levels where I wasn't allowed to go into a restaurant, or, I wasn't allowed to go see my grandfather because I was unvaccinated. So it was basically banned from society. And we can point to all of these officials and the corporations that went along with it, but at the end of the day, who really had the power to push this on to the people? Was it the government officials, or was it the actual population itself? Was it the people that, when I went to the store without a mask, that called the cops on me, or the people that called the police on the neighbors because they had too many people over? We saw how basically what happened in World War II with Nazi Germany. We had 2 or 3 out of 10 people that were advocates for this type of draconian tyranny, and then we had 5 or 6 out of 10 people who did nothing and were quiet and went along with it. So 8 out of 10 people either advocated for it or enabled it. So who was ultimately at fault here? Was it the tyrants, or were the advocates and the enablers that allowed it to happen?
Well, it's a great point, Kevin, because when you think about it, that's exactly what happened in Nazi Germany. The rise of the fascists, the rise of the Nazis, was as a result of people allowing them to do it. When good men do nothing, evil triumphs. And that's what we've got to always remember. And also to remember, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, but when somebody finds their spine, 10 others find theirs. You've got to be leaders. You've got to stand up, and you've got to be counted, and you lose the fear. When you lose the fear, it doesn't matter what they intimidate you with. It doesn't matter what they threaten you with, because regardless, they're going to come for us anyway if they get allowed to do so. And, we have to be strong as a free and independent people all around the world. We've got to push back. And unfortunately, the psyops, the fifth generational warfare, the fear factor that they employed was done to good effect. But I think that the point that you're making there, Kevin, is where people have bought into the government narrative, this whole psyops. And even to this day, I mean, I spoke to a lady from New Zealand, and during that interview, I mean, it's actually been posted now. She was a lovely lady, and she was tearing up a little bit because she was talking about the fact that her close family members, who are actually in the UK, They were of this sort of mindset where, well, you can't come for Christmas if you don't wear a mask and you're not vaccinated. You might be a threat to us. And she tried to tell them, this is not real. This is propaganda. This is a psyops. And they wouldn't believe it. And now, even after all this is said and done, there are families out there who are still hurting, that are divided and won't talk to each other simply because of this fear that was perpetrated by these globalist institutions. They knew what they were doing, dividing and conquering, divide and conquer. That's what they do. They create the problem and then they offer the solution, the Hegelian dialect, as somebody quite correctly said earlier on. So what we have to do is we have to have courage. We have to stand strong. And even although we face persecution, even although we face accusation, branding, whether they call us anti-vaxxers or not, and by the way, I don't think I've ever met an anti-vaxxer. I'm not an anti-vaxxer, although I have to say, after all that's said and done, my confidence in the medical establishment is at rock bottom, with the exception of those in the wellness company who have reached out to me and who have had doctors like Dr. Makis and Dr. James Thorpe and many others on my channel talking about the fact that they were pilloried and vilified for standing up and speaking about the truth. And, you've got Dr. McCulloch, you've got Dr. Shoemaker in Toronto, Canada, you've got loads of people. Asim Malhotra, a top cardiologist in London, he happens to follow me. We've had conversations. When all is said and done, we have to stand strong. And it's not easy. I'm not saying the fight is going to be easy at all. It's going to be hard. It's going to be long. But I do believe that when people lose their fear and start to understand why it's necessary to push back against this globalist new world order, they will become empowered. And the more prepared you are, and you know this, Kevin, because we've had this discussion many times, the more prepared people are, the less frightened you are. When I talk about preparation, I don't just mean about material goods. I mean spiritually, physically. Get fit, ditch the sugars, ditch the bread, ditch these things. Get fit, get active, because we've got the fight of our lives ahead of us. And it may not just be in terms of political fight. We may have to push back. We may have to stand our ground. I mean, the people in Canada, they were brutalized by Trudeau and his regime. Just exactly the same as the people in Australia were brutalized by Dan Andrews and his World Economic Forum regime. Well, we can't allow that to happen. We've got to push back. We've got to be fit. We've got to be healthy. We've got to be right and sound in mind. We've got to be prepared for whatever they might throw at us. And we know that they're trying to control the food supplies. They're trying to bankrupt the farmers. We've seen 3,000 farms in Holland being expropriated. In other words, forcibly seized by the state. These are farms that people have farmed on for generations. They own the farms, they own the land, they own the animals, they own the machinery. But the European Union, one of the most undemocratic institutions in the world to date, has said to those farmers, if you don't agree or if you try to resist, we're going to stop you farming anywhere else within the European Union nation states. So that's what we're up against. The fight is to the brave. The fight will be won, but it will not be won by the meek and the mild. You've got to be strong. You've got to be brave. You've got to stand up, and you've got to be prepared to fight for what you believe in, for your families, for your neighbors, your loved ones, and for your country. And I hope, Kevin, that that's given you a bit of an insight into how I feel about what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, and one thing you said, and before I, yield back and end this conversation is, it's all about empowering. And, I guess my point of view is when we take a look at, lay blame on the government, we lay blame on these corporations for doing all this to us, then we're the victims. And if you're the victim, you have no power. But if we sit back and say, okay, we as a society allow this to happen to us, then we're taking responsibility for our actions. And at that point, we're the ones that are being empowered. We hold the power to affect change and to actually move forward and regain control of society.
Yeah, accountability on our own part of the whole debacle that's going on, right? Um, Jim, I do want to pose, because we talked a little bit about like the financial aspect of things, and somebody had brought up the cryptocurrencies and and our sponsor being Xeno Mining, and understanding where this proof of work and this decentralized finance is coming from. But I see them, the powers that be, still battling quite heftily to ascertain control, and I wanted to kind of ask your view on the CBDC aspect of things and what your thoughts are about that aspect, because although I love the decentralized aspect of it, I just see them working day and night to really start to institute the CBDC aspect so that they can monitor what we do, and that bring that control back. And I don't want to say I'm fearful, because I don't want to put myself into that kind of energetic state, but I'm concerned that that agenda will eventually leak into and usurp what the whole idea behind decentralized finance and what we have is able to do.
Yeah, well, central bank digital currencies. I think one of the things to watch out first, Vince, is probably what's going to come is the digital ID, because the digital ID, that's where the battle lines are being drawn at this present time. I spoke to some great people in Ireland and various other places that I've got a really good understanding of all this. And what feedback I'm getting is this: that the digital ID is what's going to come first. Once we in this country, we've got people like Tony Blair, who is one of the most despicable war criminals that could ever exist. He led us into the Iraq War. He lied about the whole Saddam Hussein regime. Now, I'm not saying that Saddam Hussein was a good guy, far from it. But he told lies and led us into the NATO war with Serbia, and all these other things. So, he's a great proponent of digital ID. He's pushing it. There is a lot of rumor that he is being positioned to take over from Klaus Schwab of the World Economic Forum, and I think those rumors are credible. He's a thoroughly nasty individual. And when I was political in the Conservative Party, I ended up going down to London quite a lot of times to different functions. And I remember, I remember bidding on a bottle of whiskey, and I won. And that bottle of whiskey was signed by none other than Tony Blair, which I still have in my possession. It's in a lead lined cask with crucifixes all around it, because I think he's evil. But no, I'm kidding. But yeah, I really do have that bottle of whiskey. But at the end of the day, we've got to think about central bank digital currency as the next point that comes. And I do think that digital ID will be what is brought in first. And once again, you know how we saw the advent of the vaccine push out? They came in and they sugar coated it and they covered it in syrup and candy, and they said, you know what, this is going to save you. You get this vaccine, you won't get COVID, and you won't pass it on. And then, of course, we found that people did get COVID and people did pass it on. And now we're finding out, to our abject horror, that the vaccinated are dying, and they are becoming very, very sick indeed, because their immune systems are becoming compromised. Well, I think it's going to be something similar to that. I think they're going to come out with the digital ID with all the holistic reasons why you need to have it. You're going to get free burgers. You're going to get lottery tickets. You're going to get the whole 9 yards, exactly the same as what we faced with this ridiculous whole pandemic scenario with the vaccines. So they'll try to sugarcoat it. They'll try to win people over for it. But there will be those that will resist, that will not do it, because cash is king. And of course, then it will become, well, if you don't have digital ID, we're going to pass laws that you cannot receive payments. You cannot get, you cannot win your freedom in terms of your salaries. How are we going to pay your salaries? What are we going to do? But at the end of the day, when all is said and done, I think once again people are going to say, no, we're not going to have that. We're going to respect our right to privacy, because the problem with central bank digital currencies is that whenever you make a purchase, somebody somewhere, some faceless bureaucrat sitting in either the European Union banks or somewhere else within the World Economic Forum or the globalist institutions that don't like the fact that you are buying, if you happen to be maybe in America, for instance, you're buying ammunition. Nah, we don't like that. We're not going to let you make that purchase. Or you have a 4x4 utility vehicle and you go out to pay for fuel. Well, they're only going to let you get $20 worth or £20 worth of fuel. They're not going to let you make that purchase. They're not going to let you make purchases that they don't agree with, and maybe not from companies that they don't like, that are maybe not bought into this whole woke ideology nonsense about trans and all the other crap that's going on there. So what we're going to find is we might find that there is a part, like a dividing or a parallel society exists, and I've talked to a lot of people about this, where we maybe say, well, you know what, we're not going to be part of this system. We're going to live our own lives. We're going to grow our own crops. We're going to rear our own animals. We're going to link up with people in farms and places that produce, that we will support, where bartering might become a thing. But of course, they will probably outlaw things like that. They don't want people having garage sales, or at least if you do, they want to know exactly how much money you made from that garage sale and where that money came from and who it came from. So what we're looking at is a dystopian, totalitarian type regime that's coming in that wants total control over everybody else. And this is what is connected with all the things that we're talking about. But my biggest concern right now, as I said earlier on, is the fact that many, many people have potentially taken something that is going to cause them severe harm. But the whole thing fits in together. The depopulation agenda, where they're looking to try and subjugate free people, control them with 15-minute cities, CBDCs, digital IDs. you know, it's like they're just wanting to brand us, and like animals, where they can track us and follow us, whether it be with drones, as Tori Dennison said in a podcast with mine earlier on in the week, or whether they're going to just follow us using digital ID or AI. And I don't think we cannot discount the dangers of artificial intelligence. And I know I'm going into a slightly different realm here, but it is real, it is happening, and it's something that I think the elites are embracing, because if they don't have to have lorry drivers or truckers, as we call them in other places, or railway drivers or train drivers, they can move and haul large amounts of cargo and fly planes and cargo and drones all over the world just using AI. So a lot of people and a lot of industries and a lot of workers are going to find themselves out of employment in the very near future. And people have to understand that. And where do we go with it? And what do we do in terms of preparing for it? And I think one of the most important things is getting out of debt as quickly as possible. And there are ways to do that.
I agree, Jim. Thank you. Jim, we've been going for a couple hours now, so I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And so I'm going to pass the mic over to Leo. He's been waiting patiently, and we'll probably make this the last question that we have, because I do value your time and everybody else's as well. So I want to be respectful of that. And we can always do an additional space. I have thoroughly enjoyed having you on as a guest today, and really appreciate you taking that time out of your day to come and do a space with us. And with that being said, I will go ahead and pass the mic over to Leo. Leo, I'll have you have the last word as far as question and response from Jim, and then we'll look to wrap things up.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming, Jim. Um, so I'm 56, and I've seen a lot, from the right side, the left side, the middle, and government. For the last 10 years, I've seen Medicare, Medicaid, and the VA do their stuff. I've found that they're reactive only. They're not proactive in helping people, and they don't communicate with others entities. So that is a problem, especially with the suicide rate and the PTSD and the trauma with the vets. This is a concern. And I found that throughout the years, like you said, it's only by the people uniting. That's why the preamble of the United States is "We the people." Not a government is the people. We are the people. And when you unite people, together we win, meaning that there's nothing we can't do together. So my question to you is the legitimate advocacy groups that are out there that are uniting people, um, joining them, the nonprofits, either through writing letters or sponsoring them. And then the last and final thing is in the United States, when COVID came out, there was two scientists that were part of the testing, and one of them was a naturalist, and he found like two things that were actually really excellent in fighting COVID, and he pitched them to the government, and he got fired like a month later, and they went with prescription companies.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you, Leo, and I understand that there's a lot of concerns. There are a lot of good people out there. Let me tell you that this, first of all, there is hope for the future. Do not be afraid. Do not be downbeat about things. It's tough out there. It's tough looking after our families. It's tough looking after our neighbours and our loved ones. But there's a lot of good things that are happening. One thing that I will do with regards to sort of giving, though, I think a bit of a. I mean, I appreciate we've been on this a couple of hours, Vince. I'm fine with that, and to be honest with you, it's one of these things I'm passionate about. So don't think you need to wrap it up for my sake. I'm happy to go for a little bit longer. One thing I will say in relation to all of this is that there's a lady here in the chat. Her name is Moneypenny, and I would like to bring her in if I could briefly, because there's something that maybe some of you don't know about, and I think this is something that you should know about. It's called Deagle. It's called the Deagle Report, and it's something I've been aware about for some time. Some of you in the chat may be aware of this or may have heard of this. With your permission, Vince, I'll ask you maybe to let Moneypenny just to say a few words on this, because I think in all the things that we've talked about in the first session and then in this session, anybody that's in here that has any kind of doubts or worries that what we're talking about may not be true, I think this is going to set your minds on the right path. And I would encourage you to listen to Moneypenny. She's an incredible lady. She's been involved in journalism and investigative reporting. She has a very specific professional background, somebody I've known, who I've just done an interview with actually for the first time, and that will be going out in due course. But I would encourage you, perhaps Vince, you would be willing
Yep.
to give her a few minutes to do
Oh yeah.
a little bit of a talk. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just didn't know if you were on any kind of schedule, that I'm happy to keep going because I love the conversation. We can let it go for another 15, 20 minutes. I'm well happy to do that. So and Moneypenny is already up here, so I'll pass the mic over. Let's hear what she has to say.
Thanks, guys. Apologies, I will try and condense things down. As Jim knows, in a former life, in the last 2 or 3 years, I was known as the COVID encyclopedia on other platforms where I did regular shows about everything from the virology and the epidemiology of the actual SARS-CoV-2 pathogen, because I'm very into the science, all the way down to the genomic sequencing and all those bits and pieces, all the way through to I suppose we'd call it the unfortunate big guys at the top that are behind all of this. But I'm a geopoliticist. I did a degree in politics and economics. A bit like Jim, I was kind of swept into that. And Jim and I were discussing some of the sort of current things that were happening with regard to concerns that our excess deaths globally, well, in all the places that have used an mRNA vaccine, are horrendous. Our fertility levels, particularly in countries like Germany, are astoundingly significantly dropped, so much so that Kim Jong-un actually burst into tears yesterday. I'm sure that was a completely bizarre episode, but it was true. We have a population that is reducing more rapidly than many people would have thought. We have a pandemic that, if you look at it on paper, was not actually a pandemic, where deaths, where people died with COVID were counted as of COVID, and numbers were accelerated as part of a fear psyop that was designed to keep people like little rats locked into their houses, and to make sure that people were, like the CCP would, trained and controlled to obey their governments. And instead of being able to be saved and given healthcare and recommended to take vitamin D and nutrition, they were told that there was a deadly pathogen outside that they shouldn't stray into, and that this amazing vaccine would be on the cards, which they should wait for it to arrive, and the world would suddenly become a sunnier place. It was all an illusion. It was all deflection. It was all a completely bizarre psyop that many people will realize something was going on, but not why. And what I'm interested in, and what I'm studying really at a macro level as a macroeconomist would, is why, who, and when will we ultimately see what this is all about. And I think we are getting closer to this, because a completely indefensible data is now coming out, like New Zealand's fantastic, very brave data that came out, New Zealand being a much smaller population, and somebody who stood ahead of the game and put his own, well, certainly his career, not to mention his reputation, on the line to be able to extrapolate the data, which is on display now for the world, showing such a significant drop in the population as a result of a correlation and to some extent proven causation between the vaccines that those people within the New Zealand country were taking, and those that are sadly, very sadly, and excessively and completely without any without any reason or cause, really, lost their lives. And now we will have a succession, as we had with monkeypox and as we had with the scares about hepatitis, and we had 300 or 400 children in Scotland that were dying of liver problems and had to have liver transplant. We are now in an era where the mutation of RNA, which has been pumped into 6 billion adults' bodies, whether through catching the virus, having a vaccination, being shed, or in some way coming into contact with it, sadly, in the blood serum of probably everybody in this room and every one of their loved ones, is a dangerous spike protein that is unnaturally engineered by synthetic means, that was created decades ago, that even after the Cold War, when China and Russia and the United States and the United Kingdom all sat in a room and together decided that biowarfare was firstly a much more economical way than nuclear weaponry to be used as a type of attack against an enemy. And at that point, when the USSR was the USSR, and part of that being Ukraine, was an environment in which, well, Ukraine was already the second highest HIV population in the world, second to South Africa. So with a population in what is now the Ukraine already having had HIV, in a very, very sparse population on a great landmass, what a fabulous place to build lots of laboratories. Now, all the laboratories that were built across the Ukraine and Jordan and Georgia and all that area were all paid for and sponsored, and still to this day are operating, as you can watch on YouTube, because there are live videos from Ukrainian labs still now today. They are working on gain-of-function pathogens, that is, taking viruses and combining them in dangerous chimeras, just like SARS-CoV-2, and adding into them other bits of things like HIV and other dangerous pathogens that we've seen before, unnaturally, maybe anthrax, maybe Ebola, maybe something like Margot with a really high mortality rate in some sort of pick and mix scenario. Now we're in a situation where we have most of the population injected with an RNA mutating, bringing out all these strange different diseases. And monkeypox, well, why didn't we pick that up? We had polio and smallpox found in the wastewater surveillance of the United States and the United Kingdom in the last 6 months. And now we've got some white lung illness, bacterially driven, that is apparently popping up in several European countries. Well, that's no surprise, because we can see by the paperwork that people are able to see readily, that is there in front of their eyes, that the pathogen that is causing that white lung bacterial mononuclei, nucleosis, whatever it is, pneumonia, was actually orchestrated and signed off by the WHO on an NIH paper in 2020. It's on the website for the CDC, for the FDA, for the European Health Regulator. It is something that was known and probably deployed, like most of the variants were deployed. But unfortunately, we are all carrying variants. We all have a body with a different genetic makeup that will react differently to all these RNA mutations. And we are now pumped full of different complicated bacteria, microbes, funguses, whatever it might be, as is the soil that the earth is growing our vegetables in, and the cattle that are already infected, and the pets and the dogs and the cats. So a dangerous chain, a bomb has been set off that will keep us in this psyop unless we stand up and do something about it. And that's what I want people to do, because I think there is a very obvious reason that the CIA, the FBI, DARPA, the DRTA, and every part of the intelligence system of the big countries that have huge commercial gains to make by reducing the population and increasing, therefore, per head, the amount of money their countries are making, stand to gain. So a few years ago, there was a website that came out, DEAGEL, Deagle.com. You can go to it now if you want, and you'll find something very surprising. But as Jim said, when we saw this website in 2010, I think it was originally, the website has a very nice chart on it with a list of the population of almost every country, 170 odd countries, I think it is. I don't have it all in front of me, with a population list in 2017 and a population 2025. Let me tell you, the United States of America population 2017 was 316 million. The population forecast 2025, 99 million. From 316 million to 99 million. For the UK, it's 63 million as it currently stands, dropping to 14 million. These are major drops. Israel from 7 million to 3.9 million. And these are not figures that have been plucked out of the air. These are figures from an organization that has pulled together information from other organizations like those three-letter agencies that I just mentioned, also like the WEF and all those big organizations that Klaus Schwab operates behind closed doors that we know of. Those organizations have a spreadsheet which is revealed, which is in the flesh, which anybody can see, which shows a monstrous depopulation agenda. And if this is correct, which it's sourced well, it looks okay, it's got plenty of other independent sources. As a journalist, I would say this has some validity to it, and it is scary as hell. But by God, we've got 30-40% excess deaths going on in most of the mRNA injected countries. It could well be right. And as Luc Montagnier, bless his soul, RIP, killed, disappeared, like many of the others said, we could all be dead in 2 to 3 years. We've got to do something to stop this, guys. Thank you for letting me speak.
Absolutely. This is kind of what, I was talking to Jim earlier about working in healthcare, and I've kind of questioned things and seen how it was handled. It's even come so far as the point of being in healthcare for, Jesus, since 1994. It's really made me take a step back and really consider ethically and morally where the direction of medicine is going. Shifting it more towards natural medicine, growing your own food and things like that so you can control what's in it, and really kind of taking that power back. And that kind of leads to, what Jim was talking about, going back to a bartering system and electing to get away from the financial impact of having to make decisions based purely on finances because money is what rules, where, when things do get bad, is money really going to matter? People are going to want coffee, they're going to want cigarettes, they're going to want alcohol, they're going to want food to eat. Even if you look at gold and silver, they may be stores of value, but you can't feed your family with those. With the amount of depopulation going on, you brought up a good point, is if there's not as many people, their taxable base is going to dwindle away. So how are they actually going to fund what they're doing? Or is AI and robotics and things like that going to be part of that movement to replace those people so they don't have to worry about that? Jim or Money Press, either one of you, I'm happy to hear
Well,
your
yes, you
comments.
hit it on the head there. The head being the proverbial thing is the unfortunate, now well-known knowledge that SARS-CoV-2 causes a huge neurological deficit. I'm long COVID. For 4 years, I've not hardly left the house. I am so disabled by a dangerous pathogen that was synthetically made, but within that pathogen is something which deliberately targets the brain of the human. And the human brain is, within a long COVID person like myself, going to lose, it loses weight. The actual size of the brain shrinks. Our neurological deficit, our ability to cognitively process things drops significantly. So what an amazing thing that in a war, you wouldn't go and kill your enemies. You'd maim them. You'd disable them. You'd make them dependent on an economy that still has to support them. But you'd make them so their brains could not be used proactively to be able to run an economy. So you bring in an AI system that sits alongside. That means you don't have to have lots of service workers working in all these complicated, complex industries that require brain power. What timing? I mean, it is just incredible.
Well, when it looks like a duck and walks like a duck, it's probably a duck, right?
Absolutely.
Well, I was just going to say, you know, Moneypenny has a wealth of information and knowledge that is way ahead of a lot of people that even that purport to understand what's going on. And I think the reason I wanted to bring her in tonight was because you know, there is a degree of collaboration going on around the world where there are investigative journalists, there are people who understand how to find and source information. And what we're witnessing, and I go back to New Zealand briefly to the Barry Young data leak. What is being revealed there is highly significant. If it's true, then we are witnessing evidence that would leave nobody in any doubt that's got any kind of an understanding of what's been going on over the last 2, 3, 4 years, that there has been a war declared on humanity. And you know, take that in, because if there is a global cabal or a global elitist movement, whether it's the World Economic Forum, whether it's attached to something else, and I do believe that there's probably those that are really at the top that most people will never have known or seen before, that are maybe making these decisions. But make no mistake about it, they have made the decision to get rid of the vast majority of human beings on this planet. And that means you, it means me, it means our neighbors, our loved ones, our families, our daughters, our husbands, our wives. And they are so elitist in their mindset, so arrogant, that they believe they can get away with it. The Jane Goodalls of the United Nations, the professors that believe in eugenics, they are there, you know, they are there. The Professor Meadows that talk about doing it peacefully and quietly and sharing the experience. They're talking about genocide, folks. That's what they're talking about. But they are never the ones to volunteer for it. Have you ever noticed that? It's always everybody else. So, you know, when all is said and done, I know it's a dark subject, but there is always hope. There is always the light that will shine and pierce the darkness. And, you know, we have to be that light. We have to be the ones that rise, that show that leadership. And everybody that's spoken here tonight, I believe, has that leadership within them. Otherwise, why are you here? You're here, and I recognize names in this channel that haven't spoken tonight, but I've engaged with and I've spoken with in the past. And I know that you're listening, and I know that you believe in the same things that we believe. So I'm encouraged when I see people come into the channel, and I'm encouraged when I see people speaking out, because when you find your spine, 10 people around you will find theirs. And we've got to stand up together. We've got to stand united. Wherever we are in the world, whether it's Australia, whether it's New Zealand, whether it's the United States of America, whatever great country it is, we've got to stand with each other, because what lies in the future is dark, but together we can overcome it. And with that, I'll happily hand back to you, Vincent. I think you've been a fantastic host, by the way, tonight. Great to have met you. Love to talk to you again, and maybe we will at some future point. I'm just sorry that Mark had a bit of a sore throat, couldn't take part in it, because he's a great guy too. But I'm always happy to be here, and maybe we should do a few more of these spaces just to get people in and hear what they've got to say, because the truth is, together, collectively, we can overcome this darkness. And don't be afraid. Just stick with it and overcome it.
I agree, and almost, I know you would, not to divert the conversation too far, because I know I want to get to news for friends, and Kevin's got his hand up, but I think it's part of me through this whole, I've heard this narrative around, Trump doing some of the things he's done in order to bring these things to light, right? It's almost like being a parent and watching your child do something slightly dangerous and allowing them to go through that process so that they fall down, they cry, they learn to pick themselves back up and start going, okay, what do I learn from that? And then how do I make it better next time, right? It's people I think, have to see, or these government agencies, these folks, be exposed in order to really open them up consciously, to recognize what's been going on over the last 30, 40, 50 years of programming, because I honestly feel that that's the way it is. I have a conversation with my parents, and I can't fault them for being the way they are, viewing the world the way they do, is because I feel like if I look back from a macro level, there's this programming has been since their lifetime, and then they unwittingly pass it on to me, but I feel like for myself, I've sought out the knowledge or used some logical and rational thinking to really step back and say, is what I'm seeing and understanding, is this the truth? Is there more to it? What's really going on here? And maybe that's just because I've become a critical thinker. I don't know if it's just been experiences, but I just wanted to make that comment, and I'll pass the mic over to News for Friends so that we can keep this conversation rolling.
Okay, thanks for letting me speak. Now, I'm going to be 72 next month, so I'm not a spring chicken, and I've seen a few things, and I happen to be one of those people that my father told me, do crossword puzzles for your mind. Well, what I did was read SEC filings and clinical trials. That's what I did for my mind. Anyway, so I was aware of remdesivir when I watched a trial. First time I noticed it was when it was trialed in 2014 for Ebola. And it's gone through about 10 trials unsuccessfully. It's a drug that's unfit for human usage. And when I saw them demand that is the only treatment for COVID patients in hospital, I felt a chemical reaction in my body induced by the shock of understanding immediately they're trying to kill us. Because of little old me, a grandma that's not trained in medicine, and I knew that this drug is unfit for human consumption. I knew the FDA, the CDC, and on knew it too. So that was very horrible. Then I started, and before that, I started looking into the World Economic Forum. And by the way, they've removed a lot of stuff from their site. And when I look for specific things, I can't find it in the Wayback Machine. But there is no doubt in my mind, I am 100% sure they're trying to kill us. I'm aware of the Daigle site, but I don't normally bring it up because it causes too many people to lose hope. And you don't want to lose hope. What these evil psychopaths are trying to do is put fear in us. And if you have fear and stress, you make their job of killing us easier. The human body is an amazing thing. And people that were vaccinated early, a lot of them started pushing this crap out of their body, faster than they expected. And that's why they accelerated the number of shots they want to give and made them stronger. We are so much stronger than we give ourselves credit for. Now, this may sound woo-woo, you may think I'm nuts, but I'm going to speak it anyway. A while back, once I realized what the hell's going on, and I'm talking about quite a while back, I had a talk with my body, and I speak it out loud. Our words are important. I thanked my body for all it does for me. And I told it I'm giving it a new set of instructions. Forget the reincarnation and start all over with everything, with educating yourself. My instruction to my body was to keep me going in a very healthy, strong fashion for at least 150 years, because for my children, my grandchildren, friends, everyone else, humanity in general, I want to be in good condition to push back against this nonsense, because it is nonsense. And I can see by their body language and their facial expressions, they're in fear. Trump scares the hell out of them, by the way. I don't know what they're going to do to him further, but I didn't realize how bad the media was. I knew all the medical problems going on, and I knew that our global leaders wanted to do a culling, because when you go back in history, you can see historical records where there's already been discussions in the late 1800s about overpopulation. You can look at what the AMA did when they came into play, into being, how they got rid of all the holistic medicine. Everything they're doing is to try to hurt us. There's nothing about healthcare that's beneficial unless you break a limb or something like that and you want to fix that. That's the only thing I go to the hospital for, and even that with great hesitancy, because I do not trust the system, not at all. However, when I got done having that little discussion with my body, giving it orders, part of the instruction was slow down the aging so I can stay in good condition and be healthy and have the energy to move on. And I told it, start with my hands. Remove the wrinkles on my hands. Next day, they were gone. Believe it or not, I don't care if anyone believes it or not, but I'm putting it out there. It worked for me. And I believe stuff like that. If you believe you can control your body, you can. If you don't believe you can, you'll be correct and won't be able to. People need to understand they are much stronger than they realize. And I actually laugh when I look in the mirror. I am looking younger all the time. I am walking straighter. I power walk faster than my neighbors that are 20 years younger than me. I do really well. And it's by sheer willpower, because I want to be in good shape to fight against this crap. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Since you guys brought up the Deagle report, I wanted to point out that there is a lot of reason for hope. Oh, and one other thing. They're targeting the Western nations first. They want to get rid of the whites. The whites have been very successful in creating their economies early on. Like in the US, things started turning in November 63 when they assassinated Kennedy. Then in 65, we had the Immigration Act, which changed the color of our country in the US, because they're trying to do to the US and Europe, they're trying to get rid of whites. Believe it or not, that is true. And you can see it in Europe. Multiculturalism does not work. If you take people that love the country and want to assimilate because they're coming to your country because they love your country, there's nothing wrong with that. That's wonderful, because diversity is good if it's amongst loving people that really want to work together. Then it is truly wonderful. But when it's hateful people that come in and just want to destroy your country, it's a disaster. But China, one last thing, then I'll stop. China has been working on finding DNA from people, and they're working on how to target us through the DNA. And so they're doing all sorts of stuff. Whatever you do, don't comply. The only way they can lock us in, shut the door on our trap, is if we comply. Complying is the only thing that facilitates this. Anyway, I love you all, and that, I guess I have one more last thing. My heart is full of love for humanity. And even when I think about these evil psychopaths, I don't give them any emotion. I'm not going to hate anyone. I'm not going to wish ill on anyone, because I honestly believe that type of wish will come back on me. So I don't do that, but I won't give them any energy. I can't bring myself to love them, but I'm not going to hate them either. I will not allow them to put hate in my heart. And before I go out during the day, I make sure my heart is full of love, and I'm in an excellent mood, and I can laugh with strangers. And believe me, I engage with all sorts of people trying to help them. Anyway, that's all. Good
Thank you,
night.
Luz. Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming up and sharing that, because I think we can even see it, what you were talking about, the mind being powerful, right, in response to the body. And we can see that in the placebo effect. But I do want to pass it back to over to Moneypenny, and have you respond with, because of what you've been going through and what you've seen, do you see kind of like a renaissance with this, the metaphysical aspect of it, and this consciousness aspect that News was just speaking about? Do you have an opinion on that?
There's a lot to be said for body and mind and positivity. The sad thing is, in the first year of long COVID here in the UK, 2020, the highest cause of death amongst long COVID was suicide. There is a deterioration of the brain. And imagine most people that were very active, athletic, in their 30s, who are suddenly wheelchair bound. A good friend of mine who is still wheelchair bound 4 years on, with 2 10-year-old sons, twins, who are also long COVID. Her life has been wrenched from her, and it's not a life where you can carry on without any financial help, with no recognition and with no help. Depression, and ultimately a lot of negative feeling comes in. The blood itself is damaged, the epidermal layer is damaged, and you need to get blood and oxygen to the organs. And at the moment, we don't have a cure. We are treating every person symptomatically to keep people alive, but organs fail. And sadly, there's not a lot can be done, and we don't ultimately know what to do. It's very difficult, but I think she is amazing, and I wish my wrinkles would disappear, and I wish I could use my hands, because it's the one thing that's forced me in some ways onto social audio, because being a journalist for many years, I can't use my hands because I've lost all the nerve feeling in them. That's the irony of it, but it is one of the most annoying things, because I can't brush my hair or my teeth without a lot of help. And looking after my dogs is becoming more challenging by the day. She's great. I wish everyone had her spirit.
Thank you, Money Press. I want to pass it back to Jim for a kind of a final comment, and then we'll head back to Mark. I apologize. I do need to get to another event here in about 15, 20 minutes. So I want to wrap it up between Jim and then passing it back to Mark, our host. So, Jim, if you have any final comments.
Yeah, I just want to say, News 4, love that fighting spirit. I love it. I've engaged with you before in Spaces events, and you've always got that positive can-do attitude, and I think that's what we all need to have. And it's a good example of age is no barrier to believing and fighting for what we believe in. And once again, Moneypenny's spoken very well tonight, and I think that her knowledge and her understanding and her research has proven dividends in terms of enlightening us all to what's really been going on. So, not going to keep it back. Let's pass it on to the next person. Thank you.
Hey, everybody, I'll slip in here. Apologies again for my voice, but I just want to cover a couple of things. Just listening here, and I just want to thank Moneypenny and all of our speakers, News 4 and UK, and Paul. as well as government, just for coming up and sharing. Just a personal story. When all of this was going about, I was still in the New Zealand Defence Force, and I'd been serving for 18 years. And I'm also a retired police officer. And I must, really credit my wife. I did see her down listening, because I was very much, engrossed in running a business and being a Territorial Force Army officer, and I didn't have my eyes open. I wasn't paying attention. And she very much just made me promise her that I wouldn't take the vaccine. And myself being a critical thinker, I was just like, I don't know a lot about this. I'm not putting time and research into it, and I need to, make an informed decision. But, I literally owe my health and to my wife because of that. So I think what Jim was saying before about being brave and staying the course, getting fit, is incredibly important, and I did lose my military career over that decision that I made to not get vaccinated. And, not to float my own boat, but that took a bit of courage, to lose an 18-year career when my dad is a 20-year veteran. I always had that goal in sight to get to that 20-year mark. And it was quite a difficult thing, but you really have to have conviction, stand behind your principles. And one of the principles we're taught as Army officers, and it's probably the most important lesson you learn, is moral courage. And there's physical courage, but moral courage is the willingness to speak up when you see things that are wrong, despite it being an unpopular opinion. And, that's what I see Jim doing, and coming out and doing that. And that's why, I invited him onto the space. He's a courageous man. And, Moneypenny, yourself, sharing this information, I would really like to reconvene this space, and perhaps maybe even a regular space where we could do something. But here in New Zealand, we have had the release of the data. Winston Peters, who, fortunately slipped through under our MMP system at 6%, literally, had he not slipped through into the coalition, this next investigation would have been swept under the, under the rug. And that was like literally every single politician, no matter what party they were. They're all complicit in what's happening. And Winston Peters is a man of integrity, and he can't be bought. And whatever you think about him, he is, driving this. Now this data is coming out. We've seen like 11,000 New Zealanders in the healthcare system received exemptions for these vaccines, whilst every other person in the country was told, if we don't receive 90% vaccination rate, you are not coming out of your house. And the pressure was absolutely relentless. So when I listen to my Prime Minister tell me, when I've served 18 years, I'm prepared to die for my country and fight for my country. I've been a police officer. When I hear my Prime Minister tell me I'm a second-class citizen, to me that is unforgivable. And I think when we vote going forward, and Jim was talking to this as well, all of these politicians, regardless of whether they're Labour, in the UK, you guys have your Conservatives, we have the National Party, they are all complicit in what's happening here. And it's very important. And I would also say the healthcare system, there were so many cowards in that healthcare system, my personal doctor being one of them, where I went and said, look, my wife's done research around these things. I'm looking at the ivermectin website. I know it's not dangerous. I would like this prophylactic. And to then insult my intelligence and tell me that prophylactics aren't even a thing, when I've served in the military and I've received every jab that was possible there, including prophylactics, to deter things like malaria, I know that I'm being gaslit by not only my government, but also the medical establishment. And to me, all of those things are unforgivable to me. And I've made a personal stance in my life. I will never, ever vote for any of these corrupt politicians again. And that is a complete flip-flop from, me being a working-class Kiwi who was brought up. My parents worked in the railways. I'm a veteran. And, that is that is like a big thing. I come from the center left my entire life, and I will never vote in that direction ever again in my life. But that was a little bit of a personal story. But what I would really, I just want to, extend this message to the group. I know a bunch of you have been following me. I haven't been able to follow back. Every single person here who follows, we need to follow each other back and network to each other. We need to keep this message alive because COVID has died down, and probably the biggest danger to us is if we don't keep talking about this. And that's when I saw Jim doing what he's doing, I was like, holy shit, someone actually cares enough outside of what we're dealing with here to speak about it and raise concerns. Because in New Zealand, even to this day, if you even talk about this, you're demonized and you're made to essentially, you're called a cooker, a vaccine, anti-vax nutter. And it's like, excuse me, I hold a master's degree. I'm a professional officer in the army. I'm not a stupid person. And I'm a critical thinker. And I just, I'm disgusted at what's happened. But back to the positive things. We're all here together. I'm so grateful for Jim, Moneypenny, our other speakers for coming and sharing their knowledge and views. I've learned a ton. I've been sitting here listening. I wish I could have engaged more in this conversation, but I would love to extend that invite to everybody to come back. And I'm going a bit like news here. I'm tabbing on extra points. My final point, and then I will hand it back, is financial sovereignty, ladies and gentlemen, is a massive part of this formula. And that is why cryptocurrency is so important, and that's why decentralization is so important. Now, I lead a group of the largest veteran group and veteran supporter group and first responders, and that is what we are dedicating our mission to, is helping people who are of the same thinking of us to achieve this financial sovereignty, because CBDCs are coming. But how you can opt out of that is to engage in cryptocurrency and decentralization. And we need to move that space as far ahead as quick as possible. So when they do roll out these CBDCs, we can operate outside of that system that they have planned for us. And that is the big picture. And if you distill that down, that is why crypto mining is extremely important. It is the basis of cryptocurrency, is proof of work, which is decentralization, so that people can't control the money. And so that we can engage and interact with each other, as Jim was mentioning as an example. That's when we want to go buy ammunition, that we can do that for whatever reason or whatever we want to buy. So these are extremely important things. This has been a very important space. I have to extend my thanks to Vince, who is always the greatest co-host, and we work side by side. Vince, for those who don't know, is also a veteran. He's a Navy veteran, worked in the medical corps in the Navy. So we care a lot. We signed up, we were prepared to die for our countries. And now we're channeling that energy, because we've also realized that these globalist assholes who were, prepared to send us to die were actually, we were actually on many occasions going for the wrong reasons. And we are now focusing our energy into righting these wrongs and setting humanity on a better pathway. And so I feel privileged to, know you all and be part of this conversation. And I will, hand it back to Vince, because he's run the space, to have the closing word. But follow me, come and check me out and us out. We will continue these conversations, and I'll hand it back to you, Vince.
Thank you, Mark. Again, thank you to all the speakers, Jim, Money Press. That going back to what you were saying, part of being what I wanted to do with healthcare was to help people. I wanted to be an important part of helping them get back to some of their things, whether it's their ADLs, their activities of daily living. I worked in the PT area of that aspect, in sports medicine, and I've worked with some young athletes and things like that. And some of the best moments of my medical career has been able to make a difference in somebody's life, coming maybe having rehab and being able just to get them to do something like walking without much discomfort is truly one of the most rewarding things. And that's why, it pains me to look at the medical system and how I feel like it's failed us. And in sadly, I've been part of that, and that it's a little heartbreaking to know that it's negatively impacted the people that, you know, were going through this. And even though I had my own ideals, I didn't agree with it, but still people were almost forced into it for financial reasons, job related, you know, whatever it is. But I think it's gotten to the point where it's just worn on me, and morally and ethically it's causing me to step out and away from the medical arena and be more passionate about this venture of, you know, decentralization and making an impact. And that's why we do things with running a mental health space, to try to do what we can to provide back to our fellow humans, our human beings, and our friends and fellows. So I'm really proud of the opportunity to do that. And I think that we all have this journey of personal growth and discovery. I think there's a lot more to this world that we live in that we're still unaware of. And I would love to discover more of it. But that's all I have for today. Again, Jim, if you have any final words, I'd love to, you know, have you take a minute or two and give your final thoughts, and then we'll go ahead and close the space out.
Well, thanks, Vince. I think you've been a tremendous co-host tonight. I can see why Mark spoke so highly of you. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and I very much look forward to speaking with you again, Vince. To Mark, once again, you know, thank you for reaching out to me in relation to the video that I put out, wanting to speak to people in Australia and New Zealand. You're a great guy. You've got a very interesting background. I like the fact you've paid tribute to your wife for keeping you on the right path in relation to the vaccines, and to Moneypenny for coming along tonight at my request to the spaces, because you've got a lot of knowledge, a lot of professional background knowledge as to what's been going on for all those reasons that you've stated. To the speakers, I would pay tribute to each and every one of you. I've enjoyed speaking to all of you. My colleagues from Scotland, my countrymen, and all those in the UK who have spoken tonight. You know, when all is said and done, we will be doing this spaces again, I think, because Mark, I think that what you said tonight was really quite relevant, and I think it's important that we are connecting with people around the world for all the reasons that you've stated. We're making new friends, we're making alliances, we're breaking down the barriers, and we're coming together to share our ideas and our views. And it's a very, very important thing to understand that you're not alone. We are not alone. There are billions of us. And if we can connect together around the world, whether it's in the United States or Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the UK, or Europe, or wherever that might be. And there are people that follow me from South America, Argentina, Brazil. They're great people. But wherever you are in the world, just keep in mind that things are dark, but things will get brighter again. As I always say, as the world gets darker, we must get brighter. We are the leadership. We are the people that will stand up, that have the courage to do so. Those of you who are in the channel that haven't spoken tonight, I know many of you, have spoken to many of you. Great to see you here supporting these types of spaces. And I know that you, within your own circles, within your own areas of influence, will be speaking about what we've discussed here tonight. You'll be mulling it all over, and you will be leading in your own way. We are all leaders together. And I think that I'll probably hand back at this point, but just to say thank you to everybody that's been here, and thank you to all the people that will be listening to this after it goes out there. Never to lose hope, always to remember that there is a way forward, and we are the solution. Forget the politicians, forget these globalist elitists that are so arrogant that they think they've got it all. Let me tell you, they're probably going to lose everything. We are the ordinary people of this world, and we are the people that are going to end up possessing the whole thing. Just wait and see. So don't lose hope. Keep going and help each other wherever you can. Give encouragement. So thank you once again. It's been a privilege and an honor to be invited by Mark and Vince here tonight, and I've very, very much enjoyed it, and I look forward to speaking to you all again in due course. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Sorry, Vince. Sorry to cut over you there, mate. Thank you very much, Jim. And yeah, good night. ladies and gents. Appreciate you coming. Till the next time, please follow myself, Vince, and all of the panel so that you get pinged on our next space. And have a great evening. Thank you very much.